My boyfriend Fake proposed to me 15 times over 4 years as jokes at every major event. Now, I am done being his punchline. Kevin and I had been together for 4 years and lived together for 2. We met at a friend's birthday party and just clicked immediately. Same sense of humor, both loved hiking, both wanted kids someday. He worked as an electrician and I was a physical therapist at a rehab center. We'd talked about marriage plenty of times, agreed we both wanted it, even looked at houses together for when we were ready to buy. His sister got engaged and we helped plan her wedding. My brother got married and Kevin gave this whole speech at the reception about finding your person. Everyone assumed we'd be next. The first fake proposal happened on my birthday. We went to dinner at this Italian place we loved and Kevin started acting nervous. Kept checking his pocket, clearing his throat, saying he had something important to tell me. Then he got down on one knee and I started crying. He pulled out a jewelry box and inside was a pair of earrings. Said he wanted to give them to me in a special way. I laughed it off but felt weird about it. The whole restaurant had been watching and some people actually clapped before they realized what happened. The second time was at my parents' house during Thanksgiving. Kevin clinked his glass during dinner like he was making a toast. Started talking about how much he loved me, how grateful he was to be part of the family. Got on one knee again right there in front of my whole family. My mom started crying. My dad stood up. Kevin pulled out his phone and showed me a picture of a dog he wanted us to adopt. Said he needed my permission first. My teenage cousin actually booed him. My mom didn't talk to him the rest of the night, but Kevin kept doing it. Christmas morning, he made me close my eyes and led me to the tree. When I opened them, he was on one knee with a wrapped present. It was a fitness tracker. New Year's Eve at midnight, in front of all our friends at a party, he dropped to one knee. Everyone started filming. He asked if I'd make him the happiest man alive and agree to join his gym membership so we could work out together. Our friends stopped inviting us to things. Valentine's Day. He did it at a packed restaurant with a violin player he'd hired. The violinist was playing when Kevin got on his knee and asked if I'd be his partner for the cooking class he'd signed us up for. The violinist just walked away mid-song. My birthday came around again. Another fake proposal, this time to ask if I'd go on vacation with him. By then I'd stopped crying, stopped even reacting. Just waited for whatever dumb thing he was actually asking. He did it on hikes with strangers watching. Did it at the beach with families staring. Did it at my work Christmas party, and my boss later asked if everything was okay at home. The 13th time was at my sister's baby shower. He actually got the microphone from the party games and announced he had something to ask me. Got on his knee in front of 50 women and asked if I'd be his date to his high school reunion. My sister's mother-in-law said it was the tackiest thing she'd ever seen. The 14th time was during my cousin's actual wedding reception. Kevin grabbed the mic during the couple's cake cutting and said he had been inspired by their love. Dropped to his knee on the dance floor and asked if I'd cat sit for his brother next weekend. The bride cried and not in a good way. The DJ actually cut the music and told us to leave. The 15th time was the worst. We were at his mom's funeral reception. His mom had died suddenly from a heart attack and everyone was grieving. Kevin stood up during the speeches about his mom and said she'd always wanted him to settle down. He got on one knee in front of everyone and pulled out an actual ring box. I felt my heart stop. He opened it and inside was a key. Asked if I'd keep watering his mom's plants since she'd left them to him. His aunt slapped him. His own aunt slapped him at his mother's funeral. That's when I knew exactly what to do. I started planning with military precision. Told Kevin we needed to visit his dad more after his mom's death, help him cope. His dad lived 3 hours away, but Kevin agreed. We started going every weekend. I'd cook, clean, help organize things. Kevin's dad started calling me his daughter. After 2 months of this, I suggested we throw his dad a birthday party to cheer him up. Invited the whole family. Kevin thought it was sweet. The day of the party, I waited until everyone was there. All Kevin's relatives, his dad's friends, and neighbors he'd known for 30 years. During dessert, I stood up and clinked my glass. Said I had something important to say. I talked about family, loss, and coming together. Then I looked at Kevin and said he'd shown me something important with all his proposals. That commitment was about more than words or rings. Kevin looked confused but pleased. Then I turned to Kevin's dad and got down on one knee. Asked if he'd let me be his daughter-in-law because I was leaving Kevin and wanted to keep him as a father figure. The room exploded. Kevin's uncle shoots up from his chair so fast it scrapes against the floor. His face turns red and he points at me while other relatives start talking over each other. Stefan just sits there frozen with his fork halfway to his mouth. Kevin stumbles backward like I shoved him even though I'm still on one knee 3 feet away. His hands go to his head and he makes this choking sound. I can feel my pulse in my throat but I don't move. My knee hurts against the hardwood floor. Someone drops a glass and it shatters. A woman I don't know starts crying. Chloe stands up and tries to grab Kevin's arm but he pulls away. The room gets louder and louder with everyone shouting questions and accusations. Stefan finally sets down his fork. He looks at me and his mouth opens but nothing comes out. Then he looks at Kevin. Then back at me. His eyes are wet. Stefan's face does this weird thing where it shifts through about 5 different expressions in 10 seconds. Shock first, then confusion, then his eyebrows pull together like he's trying to solve a puzzle. The shouting around us gets worse. Kevin finds his voice and it comes out high and strained. He yells something about what the hell I think I'm doing. Raina starts laughing from across the room. Not a polite laugh, but this loud barking sound that makes people turn to stare at her. She slaps her knee and points at Kevin. Chloe manages to grab his arm this time and yanks him back down into his chair. He fights her, but she's stronger than she looks. His face cycles from white to red to purple. I'm still on my knee watching Stefan's face change and change again. Someone near the kitchen doorway gasps. The neighbor lady clutches her pearls. Kevin keeps yelling, but Chloe has both hands on his shoulders now holding him in place. I push myself up slowly because my knee has gone numb. Standing takes effort and I wobble a little. Everyone watches me. I turn to Stefan and tell him I want to keep him in my life as family. My voice sounds steadier than I feel. I explain that Kevin showed me proposals can mean whatever you want them to mean. That they don't have to be about marriage. They can be about asking someone to water plants or join a gym or keep a father figure after you leave their son. Kevin makes this strangled noise. His face drains of all color and goes paper white. Several people gasp at once. An older woman covers her mouth with both hands. Stefan's cousin says, "Oh my God," very quietly. Kevin's dad keeps looking between us like he's watching a tennis match. His mouth opens and closes, but no sound comes out. The understanding spreads through the room in waves. First, the people closest to us get it. Then the ones further back. Then everyone. Someone whispers, "That's brutal." Someone else says she didn't. Raina laughs harder. Stefan clears his throat. He asks very quietly if this is revenge. His voice barely carries over the noise, but everyone shuts up to hear my answer. I tell him yes, it started as revenge. But I also tell him I really do care about him. That the past 2 months meant something real to me. That I value what we built, even if it started from anger. Kevin explodes out of his chair again, and this time Chloe can't hold him. He shouts that I'm insane. That I'm manipulative. That I'm sick in the head. Raina laughs so hard she has to lean against the wall. She wipes her eyes and tells Kevin he's been doing the same thing to me for 4 years. Her voice cuts through his yelling. She asks him how it feels. If he likes being the punchline. If he enjoys having his emotions played with in front of everyone he knows. Kevin's mouth snaps shut. Other relatives start murmuring. Some nod. Some look disgusted, but I can't tell if they're disgusted with me or with Kevin. I turn back to Stefan and tell him I'm leaving Kevin. The words come out clear and final. I say I'm moving out, but I'd like to maintain a relationship with him if he's willing. The room goes completely silent. You could hear a pin drop. Stefan stares at me for what feels like an hour, but is probably 30 seconds. Then he looks at Kevin. Really looks at him. Kevin's face crumples. Stefan turns back to me and says he needs time to process this. His voice shakes. He says he needs to think about everything before he can answer. I nod because that's fair. That's more than fair. My chest feels tight. Kevin starts crying. Actual tears running down his face. Chloe puts her arm around him, but he shrugs her off. The uncle who shot up earlier starts yelling again. He points at the door and tells me to leave. Says I need to stop making a scene at a family gathering. His face is purple now. Spit flies when he talks. Stefan holds up one hand. The gesture is small, but everyone stops. He says this is his house. His decision. His voice is quiet but firm. The uncle sputters. Stefan repeats that it's his house and his choice who stays or goes. The room goes tense and silent. I can see the family splitting in real time. Half of them glare at me with pure hatred in their eyes. The other half look at Kevin with disgust. Some people won't meet anyone's eyes at all. Raina has stopped laughing, but she's smiling. Chloe looks torn between hugging me and hugging her brother. The older women cluster together, whispering. The men stand with their arms crossed. Stefan's neighbors edge toward the door. I realize I've torn this entire family apart. Split them right down the middle. Some people will never forgive me. Some people will never forgive Kevin. The tension makes it hard to breathe. I grab my purse from the back of my chair. My hands shake. I tell Stefan I'll give him space to think. That I'm sorry for the dramatic method. That I needed Kevin to understand how it feels to be humiliated in front of everyone you care about. Stefan nods slowly. Kevin makes this horrible wounded animal sound. I head for the door and Chloe follows me. We get outside and the cool air hits my face. My legs feel like jelly. Chloe grabs me and hugs me tight. She whispers in my ear that she's wanted to slap her brother for years. That she's proud of me. That what he did was cruel and he deserved this. She pulls back and digs in her pocket for her phone. Makes me put her number in mine. Tells me to call her anytime. That we're still family even if Kevin and I aren't together. I can barely see her through the tears in my eyes. She hugs me again and then goes back inside. I stand in the driveway shaking. The drive home takes forever. My hands shake so hard on the wheel I have to grip it tight to stay steady. Every few minutes I laugh or cry or both. The adrenaline makes my whole body vibrate. I feel vindicated and terrified at the same time. Part of me can't believe I actually did it. The other part can't believe I waited so long. I replay the moment over and over. Stefan's face. Kevin's face. Raina laughing. The family splitting apart. By the time I pull into our apartment parking lot 3 hours later, my hands have cramped from gripping the steering wheel. I sit in the car for 5 minutes just breathing. Then I go inside and start packing. I pull boxes from the hall closet. Start throwing clothes into them. Kevin will probably be here in a few hours. Maybe less. I need to be ready to leave when he shows up. I pack faster. My phone rings while I'm emptying my dresser. It's my mom. I answer and she's already talking before I say hello. She says 3 different people from the party called her. That everyone is talking about what happened. That she needs to know my side of the story. I tell her everything while I pack. The fake proposals? All 15 of them. The planning. The 2 months with Stefan. The revenge proposal. She's quiet for a long time after I finish. So quiet I think the call dropped. Then she says she's proud of me. That it took guts to finally stand up for myself. She admits my method was extreme. Maybe too extreme. But she understands why I did it. She asks where I'm going to stay. I tell her probably Michaela's. She offers their guest room instead. Says I should take a few days to figure things out somewhere safe. I start crying again and tell her I love her. She says she loves me too. That she never liked how Kevin treated me but didn't want to interfere. That she's glad I finally had enough. Kevin bursts through the door right at midnight. I'm in the bedroom packing the last of my clothes when I hear the lock turn. He storms in and we start screaming at each other. The biggest fight we've ever had. He calls me cruel, manipulative, vindictive, says I destroyed his family, humiliated him in front of everyone he loves. I throw the first fake proposal in his face. Describe exactly how I felt at that Italian restaurant when he pulled out earrings instead of a ring. Then the second one at Thanksgiving. My mom crying. My dad standing up. I go through all 15. Every single one. I tell him how it felt to have strangers watch and whisper. How it felt to have my own family pity me. How it felt to stop reacting at all because I knew it was coming. How my friends stopped inviting us places. How my boss pulled me aside at work. How his aunt slapped him at his own mother's funeral and he still didn't stop. My voice gets hoarse from yelling. Kevin tries to interrupt, but I don't let him. I just keep going. Describing each moment of humiliation in detail while he stands there with tears running down his face. He keeps yelling that they were just jokes, that I'm blowing everything out of proportion, that he never meant to hurt me. My hands start shaking from how angry I am. I tell him his own aunt slapped him at his mother's funeral and he still didn't stop. Still didn't understand. I had to make him feel what I felt the only way that would actually get through his thick skull. Kevin tries to grab my arm, but I pull away and keep packing. He says we can fix this, that we can go to counseling, that he'll never do it again. I'm already dragging the first box toward the door. The cardboard scrapes against the floor and he follows me, still talking, still making excuses. I stop in the doorway and turn around. Tell him I stopped loving him somewhere around fake proposal number 8. That I've just been going through the motions since then, waiting for him to either actually propose or give me a real reason to leave. His face goes white. He asks how long I've felt this way, and I say at least 2 years, maybe longer. I stopped keeping track of when the numbness started. Kevin drops onto the couch and puts his head in his hands. Starts crying for real this time, not the angry tears from before. He says he was scared to really propose because he didn't want things to change. Didn't want the pressure of being married. Thought if he kept it light and funny we could stay exactly how we were forever. I feel a flash of pity watching him break down, but I push it away. Tell him his fear cost him the relationship anyway. That now he gets to feel publicly humiliated just like I did 15 times. He looks up at me with red eyes and asks if there's any chance I'll change my mind. I grab another box and head for the door. I drive to Michaela's house with 3 boxes in my car and my hands still shaking on the wheel. She opens the door in her pajamas and immediately pulls me inside. Helps me carry the boxes to her garage where they join the others I brought earlier. We go back inside and she makes tea while I sit at her kitchen table trying to stop crying. She doesn't ask questions, just sets the mug in front of me and sits down. We stay up until 3 in the morning talking about everything. She tells me she almost uninvited Kevin from her baby shower after what he did there. Says she didn't want to upset me more than I already was, but watching him humiliate me in front of all her friends made her want to throw him out. I sleep on her couch with a blanket she brings from the linen closet. Can't stop replaying the look on Kevin's face when I told him I stopped loving him 2 years ago. My phone buzzes at 8 in the morning. It's a text from Chloe saying the family is completely split. The older relatives think what I did was terrible and disrespectful. The younger cousins are saying Kevin had it coming. She says Stefan locked himself in his bedroom after everyone left and won't talk to anyone. That Kevin drove back home in the middle of the night, didn't even stay to help clean up. I text back asking if Stefan is okay. Chloe says she doesn't know, but she'll keep me updated. Adds that she's on my side and her brother needed someone to finally stand up to him. Michaela comes downstairs and finds me staring at my phone. She makes breakfast while I show her the texts. Her husband comes down and says I can stay as long as I need. That the guest room is mine if I want it instead of the couch. I call in sick to work because I can't face my boss after everything. Spend the whole day on Michaela's laptop looking at apartment listings. Most of them are too expensive or too far from the rehab center. Michaela sits next to me and helps me search. Points out a few places that might work. Offers to co-sign a lease if I need it since I don't have much savings. Her husband brings us lunch and says they mean it about staying as long as necessary. That they have plenty of space and they'd rather I take my time finding the right place than rush into something bad. 3 days pass. I'm looking at another apartment listing when my phone rings. Stefan's name appears on the screen and my heart nearly stops. I stare at it for 3 rings before answering. He asks if we can meet for coffee. Says there's a diner halfway between his place and where I'm staying. I agree immediately, even though I have no idea what he's going to say. Spend the next 2 hours getting ready and changing my shirt 4 times. Michaela tells me to breathe and that it'll be okay. The diner is old with cracked vinyl booths and a flickering neon sign. Stefan is already there when I arrive. He looks exhausted with dark circles under his eyes like he hasn't slept since the party. I slide into the booth across from him and we both just sit there for a minute. He orders coffee for both of us. Then he tells me he's been thinking constantly about everything that happened. Says he understands why I did what I did even though the method was shocking. That it hurt him personally, but he gets it. Stefan says he genuinely enjoyed our visits over the past 2 months. That he felt like he'd gained a daughter during one of the hardest times of his life. Learning it started as manipulation really hurt. Made him question if any of it was real. I apologize and mean it. Tell him my feelings became genuine even though my initial plan wasn't pure. That I meant everything I said about wanting to keep him in my life. He stirs his coffee for a long time without saying anything. The spoon clinks against the mug over and over. He looks up at me and says he'd like to continue our relationship, but it needs to be honest from now on. No more games or hidden motives. Just 2 people who found an unexpected friendship in a weird situation. We agree to meet for lunch once a month. No expectations. No connection to Kevin. Just us. I start crying again, and he reaches across the table to squeeze my hand. Says his son made a lot of mistakes, but losing me might finally teach him something. I drive home from the diner feeling lighter than I have in weeks. Like Stefan's acceptance just validated something important about who I am. My phone buzzes at a red light and I glance down to see Kevin's name flashing across the screen. Then it buzzes again. And again. By the time I pull into Michaela's driveway, I have 17 missed calls and a flood of texts that make my stomach turn. The first few apologize and beg me to talk to him. Then they shift to anger, calling me manipulative and cruel. The last one is a long paragraph about how I destroyed his family and made him look worse than he's ever looked in his life, which was exactly what I wanted him to feel. I block his number without responding and delete every text without reading them fully. He doesn't get to make me feel guilty for finally standing up to his garbage. Michaela finds me sitting in her driveway staring at my phone and taps on the window. I show her the blocked contact and she nods approvingly, then drags me inside for dinner. 2 weeks crawl by while I keep sleeping on Michaela's couch and searching apartment listings during every spare moment. My dad calls and says he found a place near his work that just opened up. Small but affordable, and he'll help me with the deposit. We drive over to look at it on a Saturday morning, and it's tiny. Just 1 bedroom with a galley kitchen and a bathroom that needs updating. But it's mine. No Kevin. No fake proposals in my own living room. No more walking on eggshells wondering when he'll humiliate me next. My dad signs the paperwork with me, and we spend the whole weekend moving my stuff from the apartment I shared with Kevin. Kevin isn't there when we pack up my things, which feels like a small mercy. He left my boxes stacked by the door like he couldn't wait for me to disappear from his life. My dad doesn't say much while we load his truck, just squeezes my shoulder when we finish and tells me he's proud of me. Monday morning at work feels wrong from the moment I walk through the door. My coworkers keep glancing at me and whispering, then looking away when I catch them. By lunch, my boss calls me into her office and my hands start shaking because I'm terrified she heard about the revenge proposal and thinks I'm unstable. She closes the door and sits across from me with this serious expression. Then she tells me about her own bad relationship 20 years ago, how she stayed way too long with someone who made her feel small and she's glad I got out when I did. I almost cry right there in her office but manage to hold it together until I get to my car. Luca calls that evening while I'm unpacking boxes in my new apartment. He starts by asking how I'm doing, then admits he never really liked Kevin, but didn't want to interfere in my relationship. Kevin's speech at Luca's wedding about finding your person felt fake even back then, he says. Like Kevin was performing instead of meaning it. Luca tells me I deserve someone who actually respects me and treats me like a priority instead of a punchline. Hearing that from my brother makes something in my chest loosen just a little. Raina sends me a Facebook message a few days later asking if we can meet up and talk. I almost ignore it because I'm not sure I can handle more family drama, but something makes me agree. We meet at a bar halfway between our places, and she apologizes immediately for not stepping in sooner. She'd seen how uncomfortable I looked at family events, but didn't realize the full pattern until everything exploded at Stefan's party. Then she tells me something that makes my blood run cold. Kevin's mom had talked to Raina before she died about being worried Kevin was too immature for marriage. She'd noticed how he turned everything into jokes and avoided serious conversations, and she'd been planning to talk to him about it before the heart attack happened. Knowing his own mother saw the problem and died before she could fix it makes me feel sad and vindicated at the same time. I start seeing a therapist the following week because I need to understand why I stayed so long with someone who treated me like that. My therapist helps me see that each fake proposal made me more invested in waiting for the real one. Like I'd already put in so much time and embarrassment that leaving would mean admitting it was all for nothing. She calls it a twisted version of sunk cost fallacy, and suddenly everything clicks into place. I wasn't staying because I loved Kevin. I was staying because I'd already invested 4 years and 15 humiliations, and I wanted them to mean something. 6 weeks after the party, Someone knocks on my apartment door, and I look through the peephole to see Kevin standing there looking completely wrecked. Dark circles under his eyes, wrinkled shirt, hands shoved in his pockets. I almost don't open the door, but he looks so broken that I unlock it and tell him he can come in only if he leaves the second I ask him to. He nods and steps inside carefully, like he's afraid I'll change my mind. Kevin tells me he's been going to therapy too, and he finally understands how cruel he was to me. His therapist helped him see that he was sabotaging our relationship because he was scared of the vulnerability that comes with real commitment, so he kept making jokes instead of being genuine with me. Hearing him actually take responsibility feels surreal after years of him brushing off my feelings. I tell him I appreciate that he's growing and working on himself, but it's too late for us. I need him to respect my boundaries and stop contacting me. Kevin asks if there's any chance for us in the future, and I'm honest with him. I don't know. Right now, I need space to heal and figure out who I am without him. He nods slowly and walks toward the door, then turns back one more time. I shake my head before he can say anything else. He leaves quietly and I lock the door behind him, feeling sad but also relieved that we finally had an honest conversation without any jokes or deflection. I realize this is probably the most real conversation we've had in years, which makes me feel sad and a little sick to my stomach. All those times I tried to talk seriously about our future, and he'd deflect with a joke or change the subject. This was what I'd been waiting for. Actual honesty without any performance or punchline attached to it. I lock the door behind him and lean against it for a minute, listening to his footsteps fade down the hallway. My apartment feels quieter than usual. I make myself tea and sit on the couch, thinking about how much easier it would have been if he'd just talked to me like this 2 years ago, before the fake proposals became a pattern, before I stopped believing anything he said. The next week, Stefan texts asking if I want to meet for lunch at a diner halfway between our cities. I spend the entire drive wondering if this will be awkward, or if he'll tell me he can't be in my life anymore because of Kevin. When I pull into the parking lot, I see him already inside, sitting in a booth by the window. He waves when he spots me and stands up to give me a hug. We order coffee and sandwiches, and he asks how I'm settling into my apartment. I tell him about finding furniture at thrift stores and learning to cook for one person instead of two. He talks about sorting through his wife's things and how empty the house feels now. There's no weirdness about Kevin at all. No awkward pauses or careful word choices. We just talk like two people who've decided to move forward instead of dwelling on the mess that brought us together. When the check comes, Stefan insists on paying and asks if we can do this again next month. I agree immediately, feeling lighter than I have in weeks. My mom calls that Thursday and invites me for Sunday dinner at their house. When I arrive, both my parents are in the kitchen, and my dad pulls me into a tight hug before I even get my coat off. Over pot roast and mashed potatoes, my mom reaches across the table and squeezes my hand. She tells me they're proud of how I've handled everything with Kevin and the breakup. My dad nods and says he always knew I was strong, but watching me stand up for myself showed him just how much. Then my mom admits something that surprises me. She says she had doubts about Kevin for years but didn't want to seem unsupportive or judgmental. She noticed how he avoided serious conversations and turned everything into jokes. My dad adds that any man who can't appreciate what he has doesn't deserve to keep it. I feel tears starting and my mom comes around the table to hug me. They tell me I can always come home if I need to, but they know I won't because I'm doing fine on my own. I start reaching out to friends I lost touch with during my relationship. Sarah was my roommate in college and we used to hang out constantly until Kevin and I got serious. I text her asking if she wants to grab coffee, and she responds within minutes saying yes. When we meet up, she hugs me and immediately apologizes for drifting away. She explains that she and our other friends stopped inviting us places because Kevin's fake proposals made everyone so uncomfortable. They never knew what to say or how to react. Nobody wanted to make things worse for me by pointing out how weird it was. She says they'd talk about it after we left events, all agreeing that Kevin was treating me badly, but not knowing how to address it without seeming like they were attacking my relationship. I tell her I understand, and I'm not mad. We spend 3 hours catching up, and she adds me to a group chat with our college friends. By the end of the week, I have plans to meet up with 4 different people I haven't seen in over a year. 3 months after the party at Stefan's house, Chloe texts asking if I want to come over and look at wedding stuff with her. I drive to her apartment nervous that this might be awkward since she's Kevin's sister. But when she opens the door, she pulls me into a hug and says she's been keeping me in her life completely separate from her brother. We spend the afternoon looking at centerpiece options and trying to decide between 2 different invitation designs. Then she asks if I'll still be a bridesmaid even though I'm not with Kevin anymore. I start crying right there on her couch. Happy tears this time. She hands me tissues and says I'm family regardless of Kevin and she wants me standing up there with her. I scroll through social media one night and see Kevin's profile picture has changed. He's got his arm around a woman I don't recognize. I click through and see they're dating according to his relationship status. My stomach does this weird flip and I feel relieved and concerned at the same time. Part of me wants to message this woman and warn her about the fake proposals and the emotional unavailability. But I close the app instead and remind myself it's not my responsibility anymore. Maybe he's different with her. Maybe therapy actually helped him change. I need to let it go and focus on my own life. A guy from my gym asks me out and I say yes, even though I'm terrified. His name is Jake and he seems nice enough. We go to dinner and a movie, and it's awkward the entire time. I keep comparing everything to Kevin and catching myself before I talk about my ex on a first date. At the end of the night, Jake walks me to my car, and I tell him honestly that I need more time before I'm ready to date seriously. He's respectful about it and says he understands. Tells me to let him know if I change my mind. I drive home feeling good about trying, even if I wasn't ready. Stefan and I meet for lunch again, and he tells me something that makes me angry. Kevin called him and asked him to stop seeing me. Said it was too weird and uncomfortable having his dad maintain a relationship with his ex. Stefan refused. He told Kevin that he's an adult who can choose his own relationships, and Kevin's poor decisions don't get to dictate his friendships. I can tell Stefan is frustrated with his son, but also sad about the whole situation. We finish our meal and make plans for next month like always. My boss calls me into her office on a Tuesday morning, and I'm worried I'm in trouble for something. Instead, she tells me they're promoting me to senior physical therapist. The position comes with a raise and more responsibilities with patient care planning. She says I've been excelling lately, and she's noticed I seem more confident during sessions. More present with patients. I realize she's right. I've been doing better at work now that I'm not going home every night emotionally exhausted from Kevin's behavior. The promotion feels like proof that leaving was the right choice. I'm at the grocery store loading vegetables into my cart when I see Kevin 2 aisles over. My heart jumps, but I don't run away. He notices me and walks over. We have a brief conversation that feels surprisingly normal. He looks healthier, less tired around the eyes. He tells me therapy is helping him understand a lot about himself and his patterns. I tell him I'm glad, and I genuinely mean it. We talk for maybe 5 minutes about nothing important and then say goodbye. I finish my shopping feeling okay about the whole interaction. Like maybe we can both move forward as better people even if we're not together anymore. Michaela called me 2 weeks later from the hospital. She'd gone into labor that morning and delivered a healthy baby girl named Emily. I drove straight there and found her in the recovery room looking tired but happy, holding this tiny person wrapped in a pink blanket. She asked me to sit down and said she had something important to ask. Would I be Emily's godmother? I started crying and said yes immediately. Michaela squeezed my hand and told me she'd been thinking about it since I left Kevin. She said watching me walk away from someone who treated me badly showed her that family loyalty doesn't mean accepting bad treatment from relatives. Her husband had a brother who was always making rude comments about her weight, and she'd been tolerating it because that's what you do with family. But after my revenge proposal, she told him off at their next family dinner and set real boundaries. She thanked me for being brave enough to leave. I held Emily and felt this weird mix of pride and sadness, realizing my messy breakup had actually helped someone I loved. I joined an indoor rock climbing gym 3 weeks later. Needed a new hobby that had nothing to do with Kevin or hiking or any of our shared activities. The gym was huge with colorful holds covering walls that went up 30 feet. I took a beginner class and met this group of people who climbed together every Tuesday night. There was Sarah who worked in marketing, Tom who was a nurse, and Jen who taught high school chemistry. None of them knew anything about my past. I was just the new person learning to climb. We'd work on routes together and grab food after, and nobody ever asked about my relationship status or why I was suddenly starting a new hobby. It felt amazing to be just myself without the baggage of being the girl whose boyfriend fake proposed 15 times. By the 4th week, I was leading a route rated 5.8, and Tom was cheering me on from below, and I realized I'd made real friends who only knew this version of me. Stefan called and invited me to a family barbecue at his house. His voice was casual, but I could hear the slight nervousness underneath. He said it would be nice to see me, and several relatives had been asking about me. I agreed, but spent the whole drive there feeling sick to my stomach. What if everyone hated me? What if they thought I was manipulative and cruel? What if Kevin was there and we had to interact? I pulled up to Stefan's house and saw cars lining the street. Walked around back where people were gathered around a grill and picnic tables. Stefan spotted me immediately and came over with a huge smile. He introduced me to people like it was completely normal that his son's ex was at a family event. Most of the relatives were warm and welcoming. His cousin asked about my job and seemed genuinely interested. His brother wanted to know if I was still climbing because he'd heard about it somehow. But a few older aunts were definitely cool toward me. They'd nod politely but not really engage, and I caught them whispering to each other while looking in my direction. Kevin didn't show up though, which made everything so much easier. I could breathe and actually enjoy the potato salad without wondering when he'd walk around the corner. Raina pulled me aside while I was getting a drink from the cooler. She had this knowing look on her face and asked if we could talk privately. We walked over to the side yard away from the crowd. She told me something that surprised me. Several younger family members had started calling out bad behavior in their own relationships after witnessing what happened at Stefan's birthday party. Her niece broke up with a guy who was constantly putting her down in front of friends. Stefan's nephew told his girlfriend she needed to stop making all their decisions without consulting him. 2 cousins I'd barely met had apparently had serious conversations with their partners about respect and boundaries. Raina said I'd accidentally started this whole family reckoning. People were talking about what's acceptable in relationships and what crosses the line. The younger generation especially was done with the idea that you just tolerate things because that's how relationships work. She squeezed my shoulder and said even though my method was dramatic, it made people think about their own situations. Jesse asked me out for a second date a week later. He was a teacher at the middle school near my gym, and we'd met when his class came to the climbing gym for a field trip. He'd asked for my number after watching me help one of his students figure out a tricky route. Our first date had been coffee and conversation, easy and comfortable. This time we went to a comedy show downtown. He made me laugh constantly with his commentary during the boring opening act, but he never made me the punchline. His jokes were about himself or random observations, never at my expense. After the show, we walked around the city and talked about everything from his students to my patients to our families. He didn't pressure me about where things were going or try to kiss me at the end. Just walked me to my car and said he'd like to do this again. I drove home feeling light and happy. No anxiety or second guessing. Just casual and fun. Exactly what I needed. Chloe showed up at my apartment on a Saturday morning with an envelope. She looked uncomfortable and said Kevin had asked her to give me something. I almost didn't take it, but curiosity won. Inside was a handwritten letter, 3 pages long. Kevin apologized formally and took full responsibility for his actions. He didn't make excuses or try to explain away the fake proposals. Just acknowledged that he'd hurt me repeatedly, humiliated me publicly, and failed to see how damaging his behavior was until it was too late. He wrote about what he'd learned in therapy about his fear of commitment and how he'd used humor as a shield. Said he understood why I did what I did at his dad's party and didn't blame me for it. The last paragraph wished me genuine happiness and said he hoped I'd find someone who treated me the way I deserved. No request to talk or get back together. Just closure. I folded the letter and put it in my desk drawer, feeling something shift inside me. Not forgiveness exactly, but acceptance that we'd both moved on. My therapist helped me process the revenge proposal during our next session. She said it made sense that I'd felt powerless for years, while Kevin repeatedly humiliated me, and taking back power in such a dramatic way was a natural response. She validated my feelings and the satisfaction I'd gotten from it, but then she asked me to think about healthier ways to assert boundaries in future relationships, ways that didn't involve manipulation or public scenes. We talked about direct communication and walking away when someone crosses a line, about recognizing red flags early instead of waiting until you're so hurt that revenge feels necessary. She gave me homework to write down my non-negotiable boundaries for relationships and practice stating them clearly. I left her office feeling understood but also challenged to do better next time. Stefan and I fell into this comfortable rhythm over the following months. We'd meet for lunch every few weeks and talk about everything. He started introducing me to his friends as his honorary daughter, which felt weird at first but then kind of healing. Like I'd gained family even while losing the relationship that connected us. His friend group accepted me without question because Stefan vouched for me. We'd go to his book club sometimes or his poker nights and I'd just be part of the group. One of his friends asked me once how we knew each other, and Stefan jumped in before I could answer and said I was family, and that was enough explanation. It was this strange gift that came from all the mess with Kevin. A genuine father-daughter relationship with someone who chose to keep me in his life despite everything. 6 months after the party, I sat in my apartment one Sunday morning and realized I was in a completely different place. The apartment was small but mine, decorated how I wanted with plants in every window and artwork I'd picked out myself. Work had promoted me, and I was leading training sessions for new therapists. I'd joined the climbing gym and made real friends who knew nothing about my past drama. I was seeing Jesse casually, and it felt healthy and good. My family relationships were stronger because I wasn't constantly stressed about Kevin's behavior, and I genuinely hadn't thought about the fake proposals in weeks. They used to be this constant background noise in my mind, but now they were just something that happened to me once. Part of my history, but not my present. Chloe called excited about her wedding plans. The date was set for 2 months away, and everything was coming together. She'd kept Kevin and me completely separated during all the planning. Different dress shopping trips, different meetings with the caterer, different everything. She told me she'd seated us on opposite sides of the venue so we wouldn't have to interact at all. I'd be with her college friends on the left. Kevin would be with family on the right. She'd even planned the reception layout so our tables wouldn't have sightlines to each other. I appreciated how much thought she'd put into making sure we could both be there without awkwardness. She said she refused to choose between us because we were both important to her, so she'd just create 2 separate wedding experiences. I laughed and told her she should charge for this service because keeping exes separated at events was clearly her calling. The wedding venue had this soft golden lighting everywhere, and flowers covering every surface. I wore the bridesmaid dress Chloe picked out months ago, and stood with her other friends near the ceremony space. Kevin was on the other side with family, and when I glanced over during the processional music, our eyes met for maybe 2 seconds. He gave me this small nod, just acknowledgement, nothing loaded or weird. I nodded back the same way. That was it. No tension in my chest. No urge to look away or stare him down. Just 2 people who used to share a life recognizing each other existed in the same room. The ceremony was beautiful, and Chloe cried through her vows, and I felt genuinely happy for her without any shadow of my past, with her brother hanging over the moment. At the reception, they did the father-daughter dance, and then Chloe grabbed the microphone and invited honorary family members to join. She looked right at me and Stefan, who was sitting at a table near the dance floor. Stefan stood up and walked over to me with his hand extended, and I took it and we went out there together. Several relatives at nearby tables smiled at us. Not the fake polite smiles, but real ones. Like they'd accepted this strange relationship we'd built. Stefan wasn't a great dancer, but neither was I. So we just swayed, and he told me Chloe had specifically planned this moment. He said the family talks about what happened at his birthday party like it's this legendary story now. Not with judgment, but with this weird pride that someone finally called out bad behavior. The song ended, and we hugged, and I realized the drama from months ago had faded into just another family story people would tell at gatherings. Jesse and I had been seeing each other casually for 3 months when he asked if we could talk seriously. We were at his apartment after dinner, and I felt my stomach drop, thinking he was ending things. Instead, he said he wanted to be exclusive, that he'd been seeing only me anyway, and wanted to make it official. He'd already met my parents twice, and my friends loved him because he actually engaged in conversations and remembered details about their lives. Everyone kept commenting on how different he was from Kevin, specifically how he communicated clearly about his feelings instead of hiding behind jokes. I said yes, and we opened a bottle of wine to celebrate, and it felt easy and right in a way nothing with Kevin ever had. Jesse treated respect like the baseline, not something he deserved credit for. When he said he'd call, he called. When he made plans, he kept them. When I had a bad day, he asked how he could help instead of making jokes to deflect. My mom pulled me aside at Sunday dinner a few weeks later and said she could see the difference in my face, that I looked lighter somehow. Chloe called me 6 months after her wedding with news. Kevin had gotten engaged to his girlfriend, someone he'd been dating seriously since a few months after our breakup. She said he actually proposed for real this time, took her to the beach at sunset and got on one knee with a ring and everything. No fake out or joke or weird twist. I felt this wave of genuine happiness for him, hoping he'd learned something from how badly he'd messed up our relationship. His girlfriend was getting the real proposal I'd waited 4 years for and never received. Chloe said the girlfriend posted photos on social media, and Kevin looked different in them. More settled or mature, maybe. I told Chloe I was glad for them and meant it, because holding on to bitterness would only hurt me, and I'd moved so far past that relationship that his happiness didn't threaten mine anymore. Stefan called a week later and invited me to Kevin's engagement party. I could hear in his voice that he was asking out of obligation, probably because Kevin's girlfriend wanted everyone important there. I thanked him but declined, explaining that while I genuinely wished Kevin well, me showing up would make everyone uncomfortable and take attention away from the couple. Stefan sounded relieved and said he understood completely. He called me after the party and gave me a full report. Said Kevin seemed genuinely happy and mature, that he'd given a speech thanking his girlfriend for her patience, and specifically mentioned learning from past mistakes. Stefan said Kevin's girlfriend was nice and seemed good for him, that she didn't take any nonsense and called him out when he tried to deflect with humor. I was glad Stefan could go and represent our weird little branch of the family tree, and grateful I didn't have to navigate that social minefield myself. My relationship with Jesse kept deepening in ways that surprised me. We were at brunch one Sunday, and he made some joking comment about proposals, something about how his friend had proposed at a baseball game. I tensed up immediately, my whole body going rigid, and Jesse noticed within seconds. He stopped mid-sentence and apologized, saying he hadn't thought about how that topic might affect me. We ended up having this long, honest conversation about everything with Kevin, all 15 fake proposals, and how they'd made me feel worthless and like a joke. Jesse listened without interrupting or defending or trying to fix it, just let me talk until I was done. Then he said he'd never joke about proposing, because he understood now how much damage that kind of thing could do. The conversation brought us closer instead of pushing us apart, and I realized I was learning to trust someone again in ways I couldn't trust Kevin even at our best moments. The acceptance letter came on a random Tuesday. I'd applied to a weekend certification program for specialized physical therapy techniques months ago and honestly forgot about it. But there it was, congratulating me on my acceptance and outlining the 6-month program schedule. I called Jesse first, and he got so excited he picked me up and spun me around his living room. Then I called my boss, and she said the clinic would support my schedule and even help with costs, because they wanted someone with those skills on staff. Sitting at my desk that night updating my calendar, I realized how much energy I'd wasted during my relationship with Kevin. All that emotional labor trying to manage his immaturity, anticipating his next fake proposal, dealing with the social fallout. Now that energy went into my career and my actual healthy relationship and my friendships, and I was growing in ways I couldn't have while constantly putting out fires Kevin started. Stefan's birthday came around, and I wanted to do something meaningful but low-key. I organized a small dinner at a nice restaurant. Just him, me, Jesse, and 3 of Stefan's closest friends from his book club. Nothing like the huge party where I'd executed my revenge. Just intimate and warm and peaceful. Stefan seemed genuinely touched by the effort. Kept saying he didn't need anything fancy. Over dessert, he gave this little speech about how grateful he was for how our relationship had evolved, that losing his wife had been devastating, but gaining me as honorary family had helped him heal in unexpected ways. Jesse squeezed my hand under the table, and Stefan's friends raised their glasses, and I felt this sense of belonging that had nothing to do with romantic relationships or blood family, and just people choosing to care about each other despite weird circumstances. A full year after the fake proposal at Stefan's party, I met Michaela for lunch at the cafe near her house. Her baby was almost walking now, and she'd brought him along in his stroller. We were halfway through our sandwiches when she brought up the party, laughing about how it had become this legendary family story. People still talked about it at gatherings, apparently, using it as an example when discussing boundaries and self-respect. I laughed too, able to see the humor now that I was past the pain and anger. I admitted it was pretty dramatic, definitely more theatrical than necessary, but it had been effective. Michaela said everyone in the family remembered exactly where they were sitting when I got on one knee in front of Stefan, that it was one of those moments that gets frozen in family history. She said even the relatives who'd been mad at me initially had come around to respecting the move, understanding why I'd felt pushed to that extreme. I ran into Raina at the mall completely by accident. I was looking at kitchen stuff when someone grabbed me in a hug from behind. She stepped back and looked at me with this huge smile, saying I looked happier than she'd ever seen me. We grabbed coffee and she told me the whole family talks about me as this positive example of self-respect, that several younger cousins had ended bad relationships after witnessing what happened. Even the aunts who'd been furious with me at the party had come around, apparently. Raina said they'd started acknowledging that Kevin's behavior had been unacceptable for years, and someone needed to make him face consequences. She asked about Jesse, and I showed her photos, and she said she could see the difference in my smile compared to old photos with Kevin. We exchanged numbers and promised to stay in touch, and walking back to my car, I felt grateful for how things had turned out, despite the messy, dramatic way I'd ended things with Kevin. Jesse helped me carry the last box up 3 flights of stairs to our new apartment, and I kept pausing to catch my breath and wonder if I was ready for this. He'd spent weeks asking what I wanted, how I felt about every detail, never pushing when I got nervous about combining our lives. The morning we moved my furniture in, he made coffee exactly how I liked it, and asked 3 times if I needed breaks, treating the whole day like something important instead of just checking tasks off a list. When we finally got everything inside, he suggested we order pizza and eat on the floor since we hadn't unpacked dishes yet, and I realized this felt completely different from living with Kevin. Jesse noticed when I got quiet and asked what I was thinking, really listening when I admitted I was scared of making another mistake. He took my hand and promised we could take things as slow as I needed, that moving in together didn't mean losing my independence or voice, and I believed him because he'd spent a year showing me through actions what respect actually looked like. 3 months after we settled in, Michaela sent me a text with a link to wedding photos she'd seen through mutual friends. Kevin had gotten married to the woman he'd been dating, and the pictures showed him in a nice suit standing next to a bride in a beautiful dress, both of them smiling at an outdoor ceremony. I clicked through maybe 5 photos, studying his face for signs of the guy who'd humiliated me 15 times, but all I saw was someone who looked genuinely happy. The bride looked happy too, and I found myself hoping he'd learned something from our disaster of a relationship, that he was giving her real proposals and actual commitment instead of jokes. I showed Jesse the photos and he asked how I felt, ready to be supportive either way, but I told him honestly that I just felt peaceful about it. Kevin and I had been terrible together, brought out the worst in each other, and seeing him married to someone else just confirmed we'd both found better paths. I closed the browser and went back to making dinner with Jesse, grateful that some part of me had been brave enough to leave when I did. Stefan came over for dinner on a Saturday night 6 months after Jesse and I moved in together. I'd made pot roast because Stefan mentioned once that his late wife used to make it, and Jesse set the table with actual cloth napkins trying to make everything nice. We ate and talked about Stefan's garden and my recent promotion at work, the conversation easy and comfortable like we'd been doing this for years. After dessert, Stefan got quiet and looked at both of us across the table, then said he had something he wanted to tell me. He said that losing his wife had been the hardest thing he'd ever experienced, that he'd felt completely alone even surrounded by family, but getting to know me had given him something unexpected to hold on to. He told me I was the daughter he'd never had, that he was grateful the universe had brought me into his life even through such strange and messy circumstances. I started crying right there at the dinner table, and Jesse squeezed my hand while I told Stefan I felt exactly the same way, that he'd become real family to me in a way that had nothing to do with Kevin or how we'd met. 2 years after I left Kevin, I woke up next to Jesse in our apartment and lay there thinking about how different my life looked now. I had a job I loved where my boss respected my skills, and my patients made actual progress. A relationship built on honest communication instead of jokes and avoidance, regular dinners with Stefan and my parents and Michaela's growing family. My friends were people who genuinely cared about me, not people who tolerated Kevin's behavior because they felt stuck. The revenge proposal at Stefan's party felt like something that happened to a completely different person, someone angrier and more desperate than I was now. I didn't regret standing up for myself or making Kevin face consequences in front of his whole family, but looking back, I felt more proud of everything I'd built afterward than the dramatic way I'd ended things. The life I had now, with people who respected me and a partner who showed up consistently, was better than any revenge could ever be.